Just a couple housekeeping items before we get started. If
Yeah,
you
my Minnie Mouse dress.
I'm going to ask all attendees to mute yourselves. This webinar is being recorded, and a link to the recording and slides will be made available.
You're right.
Let alone hug it and get it. I can't.
As we're going along, if you have any questions, please put those into the chat box. We'll see those questions and ask them, and actually we'll have time we're going to do some breakout rooms later, so we'll have some time for answer your questions there as well. With that, I'll turn things over to Laura.
Thank you, Leslie, and happy almost summer, everyone. I'm Laura Johnson, Vice President of Communications for the National Summer Learning Association, also known as NSLA for short. And I'm delighted to welcome all of our arts champions, our out of school time champions to this conversation. Here at NSLA, it's summertime 365 days of the year. We've been at this for more than 25 years with really a singular focus on harnessing the power of summer for both youth leaders and, of course, learners, so that all young people can learn on their own terms, grow, and thrive. Next slide. We believe that summer is really a unique and underleveraged time for the world, and certainly at this moment. We think summer is a time for improvement, both for students and staff. It's a time for innovation. This is a time to really test new ideas and scale strategies, or think about scaling strategies during the summer months. It's a time for integration. We know that there is a lot to be done in the summer that you don't typically get to do in the school year. And so it's a time to break down silos, to partner in new ways, and to really think about those partnerships that can last long term. It's also time for impact. We know that summer, in the body of evidence that is out there, that summer is definitely a time to really help young people grow in ways that are really just to our imagination. So many things can happen during the summer months. Next slide. And at NSLA, we like to draw a distinction between summer school and summer learning. We know that summer school typically is viewed as something that is just for remediation. It's usually academic drill and skill. It's usually school-based and district-based. It's also sometimes associated with being punitive or disengaging, and many times mandatory for some students. And feels like traditional school. We at Summer Learning, and my dear friend Robin, she's going to talk about the woohoo that we like to put into summer, because we think summer is really a different kind of space. It's a chance to really focus on new and exciting experiences and to accelerate learning. It's a chance for young people to engage in project-based hands-on experiences. And it can take place anytime, anywhere, at home, under a tree, like our friends in Pennsylvania with Teachers in the Park. And it can be voluntary and open to all students. And we're seeing that happen across the country as many communities are expanding their summer offerings to include all students, and in particular students that really need the extra support during the summer. We also know that summer is a time for student voice and student choice, as a chance for us to really help students think about how to use their voices and to really tap into their own identities. And it's also time to create a really different kind of culture. It's a time for us to bring in traditions and rituals that create a sense of belonging and a welcoming place for all students to feel like there's a place for them. Next slide. And so before we get to the conversation, I just want to say that, you know, the arts are an essential part of a well-rounded learning experience. And so we're excited to have this conversation because this is an extraordinary opportunity with historic funding that we've not seen in our lifetime, to really think about what it means to put every learner, regardless of zip code, at the center of our decisions and to really leverage this moment to transform education, the economic well-being of students, and to make sure that every young person can grow during this moment. Arts-based programs show promising outcomes for arts achievement, other academic achievement, school climate goals, and for deepening cultural and self-understanding. And so today we really want to talk about this role that summer and after-school programs have in this federal funding moment, which, you know, there's so much coming down the pike, and we want to make sure that we're leveraging this moment to really do something that's transformative in education. So today we're going to have both a big picture view and also a state example of what's possible. And I truly believe that there's so much that's possible in this moment if we have the will to make it so. And we're going to spend some time talking about that. And we're going to spend some time talking about actionable ideas in the art space during this funding stream that we're seeing coming across many communities. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lynn Tuttle, who's Director of Public Policy at the National Association of Music Education, to get us started on this conversation. Lynn?
Great. Thank you, Laura. And thanks everyone for joining us today. And I love thinking about the fact that it is summer 365 days a year. That's awesome, Laura, that you get to think that way. All right. So let's look at this big picture, as Laura said, and think about these new funds that are available. So just double checking that you all can see the slides. So if someone can give me a thumbs up if that's looking good. You're able to see the slides?
Yes.
Awesome, thank you. So this slide, which we borrowed from other colleagues in the education space here in the DC area, looks at how much Congress is spending right now to shore up public schools. And the numbers are pretty darn impressive. So if you recall back to the first round of stimulus dollars that came out in response to the pandemic and the recession caused by the pandemic over a year ago in March 2020, the investment, I'm just going to look at the K-12 line here, was $13.2 billion. So sizable amount of funds. In December of this year, of this school year, an additional $54 billion was allocated by Congress for K-12 public education. And then this March, President Biden signed into law and Congress enacted $126 billion of additional COVID relief funds for K-12 public education. So it's an extraordinary amount of money. The $126 billion just from the March 2021 American Rescue Plan is about 8 times the amount that any given school, between 7 and 8 times the amount of any given school district gets annually for Title I. To give you a size, you know, to give you a breadth of how much money that is. So if you get Title I dollars in the school districts where you work or the school districts with whom you work, just think about how much more money that is coming in of federal dollars. So it's a substantial investment that Congress is making at this moment in time to support K-12 public education in response to COVID and the pandemic and the recession caused by the pandemic. So how can these funds be used? And these are called ESSER funds, right? Elementary and secondary schools emergency relief funding. And the purpose is really to help schools implement practices, programs, supports that allow them to reopen schools and address the academic, social, and emotional needs of students. And the funds are described very broadly. The uses of funds are described very broadly. There are 15+1 fundable activities under ESSER funds, and that title of ESSER funding falls for each of those 3 COVID relief packages that you saw in the earlier slide, right? Looking at the K-12 funding area. So how do these connect back to, right? I work at the National Association for Music Education, to music and to arts education. And why should we receive these dollars in terms of support for our programs, whether summer or during the school year? Well, for those of you who've been living through this school year, working in the arts, particularly the performing arts, there are some specific additional resources that we need in order to meet in person with our students safely during the pandemic, right? Like bell covers, special types of masks, either for singing or for instruments, different types of materials that we might need or resources we might need, like additional instruments for students so that they're not sharing instruments so that it's safe. ESSER funds can support all of that. In addition, and connected deeply to today's conversation, students may need additional opportunities to accelerate their learning. Many of our students haven't been able to be engaged with us in-person hands-on art making or dancing or production or performance. And so some of those skills which we may have been trying to teach virtually and remotely with our students over the last 18 months really can't be replaced with in-person. So this idea if you're able to come together and do things in person this summer, we can accelerate and build back up those skills that our students may have missed. Or perhaps students were getting ready to start in an art form, to start in dance, start in theater, start in their band program. Maybe we can help them get caught up so that they can be more than a beginner once we get back to school in the fall. And you all know this, who are joining us today, right? Music and arts education supports the social and emotional well-being of our students and can help create a welcoming school environment. And that includes during the summer. So if schools are stepping up summer level programs, we want to make sure that they feel engaging. And as Laura said at the top, that students have an opportunity to experiment, engage, be curious, and they can do that in our classrooms and in our art forms and disciplines. And that might help them want to come to school and reconnect and work on skills, not just in the arts, but in other content areas as well. So explicitly in the third round of ESSER funding that came out this March, summer learning was spelled out. And again, that can include arts-based camps, activities, lessons, learning acceleration, and that can include the paying of arts educators or the paying of additional instructions, paying of teaching artists or of programs that come from our cultural institutions within our communities. All of those are possible. Again, if that is a program that you have deemed of need for the schools and that connect back to how they're going to help students move forward in their learning in the arts. In addition, if you are bringing students in to do art making and learning and performing this summer, you may need some of those additional pieces of protective equipment, masks, bell covers, additional individual sets of materials for an arts classroom. Again, the funds can be used for that. And that idea of additional instruments, sheet music, or other types of materials so students don't have to share. Again, all of those could be used for summer programs as well as for programs going into the school year. In addition, the funds can help support training of arts educators. So if you have been working remotely all of this school year, most folks have sort of stepped back up into the school building by this point in time, but not everyone. So if you haven't been doing that and need to think through how you're going to engage with students safely this summer and into the fall, professional development to get you ready for that can be part of the use of the funds. And the things that you're seeing that will be posted in the chat, I'll be doing that once I'm done with my section. So I'll get all of these links for you here in a moment. Supplies that you might need to sanitize instruments or tools or materials that the students will be using or might need to use in between sets of students. Again, all of those could be supported with ESSER funds. And that idea of additional instruction. I know of one school in Kentucky that starting in late summer and then into the fall, they're paying for additional sort of adjunct faculty to help students with private lesson instruction in music to get them ready and re-engaging in skill and technique so that they can be successful in band, orchestra, and choir. And those are being paid for, those private instructors are being paid for out of ESSER funds. So that's an example. And again, purchasing materials to help you set up the classrooms if you still need to be looking at physical distancing based on your community and where you are with community spread. Again, all of those funds can be, all of those costs, can be paid for out of ESSER funds. So how do you access these magical new federal dollars? The process for applying for them will, and who's engaged in that process will vary from school district to school district. So you're going to need to talk to the leaders in your district. You can, of course, begin with your building principal. If you're fortunate enough to have a district level arts supervisor, they are probably in the know on how this is going, and perhaps you've already been engaging in those conversations. The key person here, and you'll see it bolded here, is going to be your school district's federal programs manager. That might be your director of Title I, your director of federal programs, the business coordinator who takes care of that for your school district. That person is probably the one who's going to be responsible for pushing send to push that application forward to the state to pull the funds down for your district. So your district has to go through sort of a needs assessment of what's the best use, the most appropriate use of these funds to support all students. And you can be there with requests of how you can help students succeed and grow in the arts that connect back to the use of these funds. And remember, your ask is like, how do I help my students with their needs, and how can I, as an arts educator, participate in the conversation you're having and the planning process you're going through regarding ESSER funds. In addition, the parents and the community that you serve, they can be part of that planning process too. So if you've got a strong, band booster group, or parents who are supporting your theater programs, they can be part of that planning process too. So you can bring them forward as an additional resource to help. And again, think about what's your specific request. If you're looking at summer learning programs, many districts are stepping up and getting ready for that right now, or have been planning for that for the last couple of weeks. So where can you engage? How can you be part of that process? And what's the rationale? How does it relate back to COVID, and why is it important? And again, we've got a resource link where we can get you to that list of fundable activities. And this last one, I thank my colleague, Marcia McCaffrey, who's the arts coordinator for the New Hampshire Department of Education. She joined us for a webinar back in April, and she said to remind us all that this is also a time where we can think strategically. These dollars, while they can help with summer learning this summer, can also help next summer, and again the summer after that, as well as the intervening school year. So you can also take some time to think strategically. What can we do to help grow programs to help students succeed in and through the arts as members of our school communities? And how could we invest these dollars strategically so that long term we continue to support students? Is that the purchase of additional instruments, additional materials, rethinking who it is that we engage in our programs, offering new programs to perhaps engage new students who haven't been in the arts, but have been deeply affected by COVID and might find an outlet, a social emotional place of support through arts education. So you can think quickly about what you need for this summer and for this upcoming fall, but you also have an opportunity to think strategically. And again, I thank Marcia for reminding me about this when she spoke back in April. I don't know about you, but I love this idea of thinking strategically. It feels like I haven't had that opportunity since COVID hit in March of 2020. So engage in a little bit of indulgence and think strategically if that's of interest to you and your partners in your arts education space and school district. And this, I just want to share, not quite hot off the press anymore, but a few weeks ago from the US Department of Education, when they put out a frequently asked question guide related to ESSER funding, they explicitly called out how arts and music can be paid for out of ESSER funds. And I just love this, so I wanted to leave you with this quote, right? An LEA, which is just a fancy way to say school district, might also address the needs of students arising from the COVID-19 pandemic by using these funds to implement or expand arts programs, such as music programs, including purchasing instruments. So the US Department of Education knows that this is one of the ways in which the funds can be used, is inviting you to think about how to use the funds strategically. And so, the funds are sitting out there. They can help us engage with summer learning with students, including in the arts. And I'm hoping that that gives you some food for thought, sort of from the large picture perspective. So thank you everyone for letting me share that. And now I get to turn it over to Robin for an example of what's going on locally. Robin?
Thank you, Lynn. I loved all the engagement. I was trying to tally how many times you said engaging, and I lost count. So I am the director of Engaging Creative Minds. So it's a great segue from that presentation into what we are doing in our small little corner of South Carolina. I want to shout out to all my friends here from South Carolina. I saw you as you joined and woohooed on mute to see you here. You all are making a big difference in our state, and I'm just really excited to see so many friends here. So yes, Engaging Creative Minds. I'm here to share how we are part of the American Rescue Plan. We are receiving ESSER 3 funds this summer to provide arts programming. We pay teaching artists, and I'm going to share a little bit about how those funds are being used. So to give you a little backstory, we're in 12 schools this summer for between 4 and 6 weeks. And we are in all rural, urban, and suburban areas. Our program is traditionally 6 weeks, but as some of you know, the summer is much shorter in a lot of areas. So our camp has been condensed into 4 weeks. So we're following the school district's model of that and providing 4 weeks of instruction in those 12 schools. So with that said, Engaging Creative Minds is really about school culture. We are about a woohoo spirit. We like kids to feel more excited than ever to come. We want them to feel like they're coming out on a football field for the big game with the cheerleaders and the band and the announcers. We want the adrenaline about as high as it can be so that they come to us fired up and ready to think and lean in and be curious. So we have bubbles and really loud music. My staff laughs at me because I always say, go find a sound system that competes with the Turkey Day run. I want to drive the neighbors crazy. So we want really loud, lots of energy and lots of excitement. Our work is funded by ESSER 3 funds for a primary purpose of re-engagement. In previous years, we've worked to provide heavy literacy programs. We've worked to embed STEM into our arts to create STEAM. This summer, though, every district is asking us to re-engage the students and to provide a platform for teachers to come back to the school and get some good energy. Everyone's tired. And so the last thing we want to do is make our summer for teachers feel like a summer job. Just like Laura said, how summer school and summer camp should feel different, it should also feel different for teachers. So I'm honored to say that we have all of our spots for our teachers filling right up. Teachers are showing up and excited to join us. They get paid to be camp counselors, but their role is to participate as a learner. So they will be with a group of students rotating through the artists' workshops and sessions and participating as a learner. So they may be learning how to teach solar system concepts in a dance class, or physics with a superheroes unit in theater, and all kinds of great new strategies they can take into their classroom in the fall. So the 3 pillars we look at, so we're kind of like Disney World. You go to the Magic Kingdom and you're just wowed by everything, but underneath there is a system and an intentionality in every decision made. From the moment you enter to the moment you leave, everything is intentional. And we are very intentional with our summer camp. So yes, we have a woohoo spirit and we have lots of bubbles and super loud music, but we also have a system in place that is very serious and very intentional. And there's a programming system and there's an operational system. And both of those systems operate under 3 pillars, which are engagement, relationships, and attendance. And we tell everyone who works with us, whether we're trying to embed literacy or whether we're working on re-engagement, we tell everyone that works with us that they need to always focus on those 3 pillars: attendance, relationships, and engagement. And it's one of the like chicken and egg concepts. We don't know what comes first. You have to attend to be engaged, but you have to be engaged to create relationships, and you have to have relationships to want to show up. So it's sort of, we've never been able to nail down which one comes first. So we love them all. So to just briefly share how ESSER 3 funding is funding our operational side. So we have our carpool, which I've talked about, which is full of energy and lots of woohooing and really exciting. You know, we're so glad you're here. And then at the end of the day, we're so glad you came and we'll see you tomorrow. We try to surprise them. We use local community organizations like our local River Dogs or a college cheerleading squad, anybody that can bring new and fresh energy and be different. So the kids aren't always, they aren't always sure what's going to happen when they get off the bus or out of the car. We never want it to be routine. We also, I talked about the rotations through as the teachers participate as learners. And these ESSER 3 funds are paying teaching artists in each of the communities we serve. We search locally, we hire locally, and they are teaching the sessions. So in every camp location in all 12 of our schools, we'll have dance, music, theater, and visual arts. And every student will rotate through those and have those experiences with us this summer. And in addition to that, we have a high school leadership program. So this summer is the first summer we're partnering with another nonprofit called Yes Carolina, and they provide leadership institutes in the summer for high school students. And we partnered with them because we recognized one of our challenges was always having our high school students who come to us either for community service hours or for summer work, for employment. They come to us and they are junior counselors and they learn a lot, and they have fun and they're great, but we feel like that's always lacking intentionality. We love them, but we aren't doing anything to grow them or to improve their lives in any way other than summer employment or community service hours. Partnering with Yes Carolina has given us an opportunity to bring in an organization that already embeds summer leadership for high school students. So this summer, for the first time ever, our high school students not only will be junior counselors, but they will participate in a series of really intentional, robust workshops like financial literacy and self-awareness, entrepreneurship, and leadership skills. So this is a pilot for us, but we're really excited. And again, the ESSER funds are providing this for our students to re-engage the high school students as well as the younger students. And we are a K-8 camp. I don't think I mentioned that. And then lastly, I will just say that our woohoo culture is really important to everything we do. It does create a system, it creates a space where kids want to come. So when history shows that a certain camp might have attendance drop off after the 4th of July, our camps, the attendance goes up. So it's this, again, this engagement and excitement that brings kids back. And that's the woohoo culture. So what we like to say is the woohoo culture is in educational ecosystems. So we always want to change the culture of a school district, an individual school, and then ultimately into the classroom. So there are a lot of pieces and parts of this, but when we can get teachers excited through the arts and we get kids leaning in to do more arts, the attendance does go up, they are engaged, and the relationships they create both with the adults and their peers are really strong and they're ongoing. So we are super excited to be using ESSER funds this summer to not only pilot a new high school program, but to provide arts in 12 schools. This is a big leap for us. We usually are in 1 to 2, maybe 3 schools. So the ESSER funding allowed us to expand on what works. And I will shout out to the National Summer Learning Association. We won the 2016 Excellence Award. So we're really honored and proud, and we wear that badge wherever we go. So I just want to thank them for their support and their encouragement. And AEP, Jamie, for your leadership through the arts. We are just thrilled to be here and really excited to share our story. So thank you for listening. And Jamie, I'm going to turn it back to you.
Great, thanks, Robin. Before you go away, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Somebody in the chat had a question about the funds only being available to school districts, which is true, and Lynn confirmed that for us. So can you tell us a little bit, what has that funding path looked like for you guys to get funds that are only awarded to school districts into the Hands for Your program?
That is a great question, and I did leave that out. I will tell you, it's a great story. Talk about when a door closes, climb through the chimney. Because we tried the window, we tried the back door, we tried another window, and we finally went through the chimney. We were hearing, so when we first found out about the ESSER 3 funding, we hit the ground and we reached out and we were told, oh, you know, we've already spent that money. We don't have that money. We have other ideas. And those were all the windows and doors being closed on us. And so what we did was we consulted with what I call ESSER experts. Lynn, probably you were part of that. And we created a single page document for every school district we serve. And what that document showed was the exact amount of funding coming to them, along with the percentage of set-asides specific for summer and after school learning. And then we showed how our work aligns with that and how we support the ESSER funding requirements of that money. So then they reached out and we were invited in. They are paying us, the school districts pay us with their ESSER funding.
Yeah, thank you. Important part of the conversation is those existing relationships, right? Before we kind of segue into our last piece, I do want to highlight two things because I want to model what I'm going to ask you all to do. We are going to move in just a moment to some breakout rooms. I'll explain those. But we're going to tackle these questions and you are going to have a facilitator in your room. So I'll be in one, Lynn will be in one, Robin in one, Laura will be in one, and then Ali will be in another. Great, thank you. And so the questions that we're going to talk about in these groups are, what did you hear today that's sticking with you? And I'm going to model that right now. The two things I heard that are sticking with me, one was from Lynn about, you know, the school district federal funds manager, whoever that person is in the district, being the person who's going to hit send and making sure that there's a relationship with that person or that you've reached out to them. And then the second one was something that Robin was talking about, and that's this idea of focusing this summer arts work on re-engagement. One of the things that children have not had a chance to do as much over the last 16 or so months is human-to-human interaction outside of their own households. And that's the one thing that the arts can do well. It's not buying a piece of software, it's not, you know, implementing a program, it's funding human-to-human interaction. And I think that's going to be a really important part of this. Those are the two things that stuck with me. After you identify and call those out to the group, we're going to ask you to consider, okay, based on what you heard, what's an opportunity that you have right now regarding arts-based summer learning? What barriers might exist related to that opportunity? And what questions do you just not have answers to right now? And then we're going to ask you to wrap up your conversation by 2 o'clock at the latest. We're not going to come back to these big groups. And the last question you're going to tackle before you wrap up at 2 is, what's one action you want to take related to arts-based summer learning when you go back to work tomorrow? So based on all of those things that you have a conversation about in your breakout sessions. All right, so we're going to open the breakout rooms in just a moment. Those breakout rooms are going to be aligned loosely to what you might do in your job. And so Lynn is going to facilitate the programs breakout group. So if you're a person who's a program director, or you're a curriculum designer, or you know your job is really designing or thinking about programs, you're going to go with Lynn. If you are a communications person, or communications is a big part of your job, you're going to go into a breakout room and Laura is going to facilitate that. If you are a person and your main part of your job is engagement, so engaging those partners, building those relationships, you're going to go in a room with Robin. And then Ali from NSLA is going to facilitate the last breakout group, and that is folks that really do a lot of work with funding and grants. And then I'm going to stay right here in this room. And I am going to talk to folks whose jobs center around operations. So this could be leadership decisions. This could be, you know, I'm the person that pays the bills. You know, I'm the person who supervises staff, whatever that group is. All right. So in a moment, we're going to open all rooms and you're going to see a pop-up on your screen and you're going to be able to put yourself in the room that you want to go in. And as I said, operations is going to stay here with me. So you can just close out that pop-up. And if you have problems, we will help. Great question, Monica. If you wear several hats, you get to choose. Choose the one that you are most excited about, choose the one you have the most questions about, choose the one that you're just interested in exploring today. Great, we've got folks choosing their breakouts, excellent. All right, so we'll give those of you who are still here just another minute to choose. If you don't want to be in the operations group, if you do want to be in the operations group, you can stay here with me. And let me know if you're trying to get out and go to join another room and you can't, and I will help you. All right, so it looks like we've got Cynthia, we've got Stell, we've got Carrie, we've got Deanna, Kevin, Emma, Erica, and then we have a phone caller that I can't see a name for, but hello, phone caller. Looks like you are calling from a Pittsburgh area code. So happy to have you. So the question for the group, and I would invite you all to, oh, Carrie, great. I can put you in that room with Robin then. Let's see, assigned to, is engagement, right, Carrie? So, okay, there. All right, great. So the first question for you guys, and I would invite you all to unmute so that we can just have an open conversation. The first question is, what did you hear today from Lynn or Robin, or even Laura at the beginning, that's really sticking with you right now?
I thought it was important distinction between summer school and summer learning. I've heard the two terms used in multiple times, but I never really thought about a distinction between the two, and I thought that was critical.
Kevin, was there something specific that really stood out to you, or just the whole idea of differentiation?
I like the idea that, usually when we say the term summer school, and I didn't even really think about it, but usually when you say summer school, it sounds punitive. It's indicative of some sort of a needed remediation or something like that. So that's what really stood out to me. Just by saying it's summer learning, it kind of takes some of that negative connotation away from it. So that's huge for me. I mean, it's marketing for all intents and purposes.
Yeah, great, thank you for sharing. Anybody else, something you heard today that's really sticking with you? Okay, so I'm going to ask you now to think about what you heard today. ESSER funding, how the funding is flowing from the federal Department of Ed to the State Department of Ed to local school districts, and then out to partners who may be working with the district. Thinking about the kinds of things that are fundable with ESSER funds. What's an opportunity that's present right now in your context that you're thinking about, oh, I didn't think about that, or that's something that I need to think more about, or that's an idea that I have that I want to pursue? Belle, I saw that you unmuted. Did you want to jump in?
Well, yeah, I wasn't sure if I needed to raise my hand first, but
it's a small group. We can just.
So I can't specifically respond to that question, but I write for the publication Youth Today, and what I'm interested in finding out from people here are what what things they are envisioning. And I heard a little bit from Robin Belinsky about how her program has expanded this summer with the use of ESSER funds and how they got those funds. But I'm interested in what other people might be doing.
Great. And so just to check on kind of where we are in that process, on Monday this week, that's when each state's ESSER implementation plan was due to the, each district's ESSER implementation plan was due to their state departments of education. And so once we get a sense of what districts have said they want to do with that money, I think that's a really good opportunity. And those are public records, right? Because those are public plans. So they will be published probably on the US Department of Education's website, probably on the State Department of Education's website. I think that's a real opportunity. If you have a handful of districts that you work with or a specific district that you work with, get access to that plan and see what are their goals? How does what you align or what you do align with those goals?
And the funds that, the plans that people are putting forward right now, that the districts are putting forward, how soon are they going to be actually implemented? Are we talking about this summer or is it next summer we're really talking about?
Yeah, well, the funds are going to be released, I think within the next couple of months. So, we're really talking about kind of probably mid to late summer. And then they're going through September of 2024. And then my understanding is because of an interesting federal funding language in the guidelines, the districts then have an extra year beyond that to spend the money. So like you can encumber the money, right? You can say, yes, we're gonna sign contracts or we're gonna have these partnerships with people and say, yes, we have a plan for the money. And then you've actually got another whole year to pay those bills.
So 2025, programming in 2025 could come from this funding.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're talking about lots of years, lots of time.
And I'm also interested in how community organizations are like Creative Minds are, partnering with their local school districts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any of you work for an organization and want to share kind of what your conversations have been or what your thinking has been?
Well, I work for a actual school district. I work for Warren City Schools here in Ohio, and what we do with I run a 21st Century Community Learning Center. My program is after school time funded by 21st Century Grant. And so what we typically do is we are kind of in complete control of the primary hours. We do 3 hours after school for middle school kids in 2 different sites. We are kind of in control of the academic piece and the homework piece and all of that. And then what we typically do is we partner with community-based organizations or community-based individuals to provide some of the youth enrichment pieces. And we do some of that youth enrichment or youth development in-house, but we'll partner with, say there's for instance, we partner with the local Philharmonic at one point to provide violin lessons and for some of the kids. We partnered with Taekwondo in the past. We partnered with our local art gallery to provide art enrichment. And so those are like some of the ways that our program has utilized dollars, and that's how I could see us moving forward with any additional resources we might have access to.
What district did you say you were with, Kevin?
Warren City Schools.
Warren City Schools. Okay.
Yes.
And do you have any thoughts about how you might, what you might want to do as far as reaching out for ESSER funds?
If we did that, as far as how I would want to use them, I would probably want to access some of the more expensive programming that, really strained my regular budget. For instance, like karate and things of that nature are very pricey. Some of our arts programs cost a good bit of money. And so those are ways that I would want to implement that. And then it'd be nice, I kind of missed a portion of the earlier meeting, but I didn't know what the limits were as to what we could use funds for. For instance, I'm not allowed to use 21st century funding to pay for food of any kind, unless it's attached to a lesson plan. So I could, for instance, I retain the services of Ohio State Extension here locally, and they do a cooking program. So their food and their food for their recipes and whatnot are all written into their curriculum. And so it's written up and it's a purchase service, but I could not just directly buy food or anything like that, which presents a little bit of a challenge when we do things like a field trip, because the students that I reach for, some have very significant socioeconomic barriers that we have to overcome, which is the whole point of our program. And so some years are better than others as it relates to securing outside donations and the generosity of people in and around the community. That is something that I would definitely take a look at if those funds could be leveraged in that way. That would remove a substantial barrier to some of the things that we like to try and get done.
Kevin, my understanding is that there, and Lynn talked a little bit about this, but she didn't go into specifics. There are 16 allowable uses for the ESSER funds, but the very first one is anything that's allowable under any federal education legislation.
Okay.
So anything that is currently allowed under ESSA, anything that's currently allowed under Perkins, anything that's currently allowed under the Students with Disabilities Act. There are lots of things. And so, yes, I believe we could check with Lynn just to make sure, but I believe food would be allowable, especially if it's tied to curricular resources. Like I'm imagining family consumer sciences teachers, right? They would, of course, need to purchase food. So that would be an allowable expense. And then I believe field trips and admission fees would be as well, but we can confirm that. Just to make sure.
It'd be great to know.
Kevin, is your program in the summer as well as during the school year?
No, my program typically runs all for the span of the school year. And so
Okay.
one of the things that, we take a look at is, particularly if there's funding and resources available, would be to try and expand in the summer, because it is hard enough to retain staff for after school programming. The hours are odd, and typically I get one of two types of employee as far as my boots on the ground implementers, which are either college age students, recent grads, just starting off their career, or I get recently retired individuals who can fill those roles. And there are benefits and challenges to each of those categories of employee, but the challenge is kind of retaining them over the summer break, and making sure that their needs are met, because oftentimes if it's a recently retired person, they're just looking to supplement their income a little bit and stay a little bit busy, and give them 3.5, 4 months off, and they may or may not want to come back. They may find something else, and so now I'm back at square one when I start again in the fall. And that is a challenge because I deal with middle schoolers exclusively, and a big portion, as with anybody who deals with kids, is rapport. But it's critical in that middle school piece, to in my personal belief, that that's the time where they're changing, their bodies are changing, their agency is changing, and so I need folks who are kind of self-aware and have a relationship with these kids and are able to sustain that through 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And it is hard to do if I'm constantly rolling staff.
Staff retention is definitely one of those allowable expenses.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Yeah,
And we had a couple of other folks join us. We are talking about opportunities that are present right now. We kind of segued into barriers. You know, Kevin, you just said one of the barriers is keeping those folks on through a summer so that the students have that continuity. So any other barriers we want to talk about, or questions that you still have that you don't have any answers for right now?
I know another barrier that we had throughout the school year, and it was unique to this time of pandemic, was you know, we dangle carrots because we reach for kids who are sometimes challenging, you know, and so the way we kind of get positive changes in behavior and whatnot is that, you know, our kids are on kind of an incentivized system where, you know, you earn so many points for attending each day, you earn that many more points for participating, and you earn X amount more points for demonstrating leadership. And so these points have to add up by certain points in time in order to qualify for our field trips or you know, different experiences that we provide for the kids outside of the regular program day. And it was very difficult to kind of do that because, you know, our district didn't allow any actual field trips to occur this year because the problem was maintaining safety and appropriate social distancing on transportation. And so, you know, and honestly, that's my second biggest expense outside of payroll is making sure I provide, you know, safe and adequate transportation for our students. So we're only busing one way. They stay after school and we bus them home, but our district is split up into 4 quadrants, and some of the coverage area is pretty substantial. So I can't comfortably have them walk, especially if it's getting dark, you know, an hour into the program, and they've got, you know, way better than a mile to go. So transportation is a barrier, and the ability to navigate in the regular world has been a huge barrier this year because it's a big part of our incentive program.
Yep. Wendy, welcome. So we had some other folks join us. All right, so we've only got a couple of minutes left before we're going to segue out. So I'm going to ask us to think about one action. So based on the information that Laura shared, the information that Lynn shared from that big picture perspective, examples that Robin shared, conversations that we've had in this small group, what's one action you want to take related to arts-based summer learning when you return to work tomorrow?
Well, I'm a reporter, so one of the actions I'm going to take is call some people who do arts-based programs.
Yeah, great. Start to get the word out, right? Cynthia, Sheena, there a few?
I just joined. Sorry, I teach all morning, and I'm like, I want to get in here for at least for a few minutes.
Yeah.
I'm doing a STEAM program for all girls this summer,
Mhm.
and so like there's a huge art component to it, and so I'm excited to watch the recording of this later and then implement what I can. I love the idea of incorporating any type of arts into my teaching, so I'm sure there will be plenty of tidbits for me to take away from once I watch the rest of it.
Yeah, great. Sheena, do you know you're in a school district?
I'm sorry?
Are you in a school district?
Yeah, I'm in Tacoma Public Schools. We're third party though. I work for communities and schools.
Okay.
And so we do basically a little bit of everything. And yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was asking because Lynn shared with us that one of the very first things that we might consider doing is finding out who the federal programs person is in the districts, because they're the ones that are going to really be responsible for, she said, hitting hitting the enter button on the send for the applications.
For sure. Yeah, I know that there's a lot of like transition to like, at least for the Tacoma Public Schools, the big thing for us is re-engagement. And I know that arts especially is there's such a big an engagement tool for so many. So I think that that will definitely be something that they'll consider. And they are talking about like even next year's programming for after school right now for the whole district. And the big push is to like extend after school programming until 6 p.m. and to really have it to be like really like immersively rich. So I'm hoping that we can get some of the arts in there too. I would love to run a theater program at my school just because it's high literacy needs, and yeah, just anything to get students into arts and academics at the same time I'm all about. So yeah.
Great. Cynthia, anything that's you're thinking about for next steps? Oh, you're muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I am the McKinney-Vento homeless liaison for our school district, and we serve anywhere up to like 1,400 children. And in the past, we used to have a lot of summer programming, and we worked with our local arts partners to bring in arts and music and everything into the summer programs. Unfortunately, we weren't able to do that this year, so I'm looking at all the opportunities that we could have in getting some of the ESSER funding for next year so that we can encompass that. And also I'm looking at doing some of the after school programming. I really like being able to offer, I have my notes over here on the computer, being able to offer a lot of other things to our kids in regards to music and arts. And I like bringing like karate and maybe music and dance. I like the theater idea, because these are going to our kids who really don't have the opportunity to participate in a lot of those because they're in shelters, they're in cars. And so it's really good that listening to all this to see how maybe I could utilize the funds.
Cynthia, who are you with? What school district?
I'm with Wichita Public Schools, USD 259 in Wichita, Kansas.
Okay. One thing I don't know if we have time. I don't know how much time we have left, but I am also.
It's 2:00, so I would
Okay.
say I'm happy to stay still, at least for a couple of minutes. But do you want to kind of give folks the opportunity to log off if they need to? So thank you all. Appreciate your time today.
And if you have any questions, you can message me.
Yeah, how do I reach you?
cmartinez@usd259.net.
Thank you.
So while you're writing that down, Sheena, yes, funds, staffing is an allowable use of funds. So if you go back and watch the recording, Lynn talks a little bit, and she also put a link in the chat to a blog post that kind of goes into detail about that. Actually, let me grab it while Stell's asking her question.
Yeah, thanks, because the chat doesn't show anything from when I wasn't here. So yeah. Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah. And it says in the music classroom, but it's beyond that.
One of the things I'm wondering about is there have been a lot of students who've sort of dropped out of sight this past year, and I am wondering about the role of some after-school programs in finding and re-engaging those students. And so I guess the first thing I'm wondering is do you have a sense that a lot of students have just sort of, disappeared from school?
Yeah, Chalkbeat and the AP just released a study. They released it earlier this school year, so it was December of 2020, that found, let me see if I can remember my numbers. They found about 2%, was either 2 or 4, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's about 500,000 children that had really disappeared from the education system. We also have another chunk of students, and I have to look up the number, where parents just said we have to homeschool and we don't have any other choice because of our circumstances. Yeah, so that information is definitely out there.
And Lynn, this is a question, a dumb question, but what is AEP? Who do you work for?
AEP is the Arts Education Partnership.
Okay.
Yes. All right, well, welcome back, everyone. We are at time. So just want to say thanks to everybody. Leslie, I don't know if there's anything that we need to do to wrap up or if we're just saying goodbye to everybody. Nope. Okay, great. Well, thanks everybody. Hope you have a great day.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. This was great. Will there be a recording? Do we know?
Yes.
Yes. there
Thank
is a
you.
recording.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, Robin.
Hi, I didn't know if I was supposed to come back in.
Oh, no, you don't need to. I think everybody's left now.
Okay, thanks for everything. This was great. Bye.
Bye.